Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so excited to see everyone, so excited to be here and be able to be present. Just a warm welcome to each of you. Also, a good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Bianca Edwards. I'm with Sacred Apothecary and joining with the Black Freedom Collective and Community Change here today to bring this broadcast to you. Today, we're being joined by a group of amazing Black organizers across the country who are not only building power in their communities, but doing some deep work around self, some deep work around connecting with not only themselves and their families, but also voters that are stepping into this upcoming election. We're going to sit a little bit around what it means to be Black in America today and what it means to actually practice self-care. What does that look like? How do we do it? So before I introduce the panelists, I do want to invite everyone who is joining us today on this live broadcast to post your questions, your stories, and ideas in the chat. We really want to urge you to register to vote this upcoming election. We know that sometimes our votes don't feel like they're counted. And the reality is that they are not only counted, but they matter. They matter deeply to our lives, to our families' lives, to those that we're in community with. And they wouldn't want to suppress them if they weren't so powerful. So as I invite you in and invite you to remember to register, I also want to invite you into this space and look in the comments. And there's this invite that'll be in there to sign up to volunteer and to engage your family, your friends, and your community members through some voter outreach opportunities that we have. All you have to do is drop your name and your email in the sign up sheet linked below to join one of our weekly volunteer meetings. So right now I'm going to go ahead and invite on our afternoon's guests. I'm going to start with Janelle Bailey. Janelle was born and raised in Chicago and is an experienced campaigner who's devoted her career to organizing to improve the lives of working people, especially queer and Black workers. Janelle is currently serving the Los Angeles Black Worker Center as the co-executive director of organizing and programs. Her team recently won the first industry-wide union for security officers in Milwaukee. They supported security officers in Chicago as well to recover more than $100,000 in stolen wages. When Janelle is not explicitly resisting various forms of oppression, she's most likely hopped up on coffee. I haven't seen this yet, y'all, so we'll see what happens when she comes on. Hopped up on coffee, wiping out on skates, or playing Animal Crossing. She has a shockingly good luck at calling radio stations and winning bingo games, and I'm curious about this. So Janelle, I am so honored to have you join us. I'm so honored to know that you serve and organize along all your working class Sibs in a fight that is just and that also preserves their dignity. Welcome onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. And next, I'm going to bring on Caitlyn Johnson. Katelyn has over a decade of valuable outreach experience, including leadership development, civic engagement, and community organizing. Katelyn's a graduate of North Park University and participated in community organizing initiatives on and off campus, focusing on racial reconciliation and student leadership development. Over the past 15 years, she has overseen a range of social justice initiatives in and around Chicago, including 6 years as the executive director of a community-based organization focused on engaging low-income communities of color in campaigns related to affordable housing, public education reform, public safety, criminal justice reform, economic justice, drug policy reform, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Katelyn completed academic studies in diversity and inclusion at Cornell. Next, I'm going to welcome in Ray Greene. Ray is Reverend, let me start over. Reverend Raymond Greene Jr. is the executive director of the Freedom Bloc, the founding director of the Freedom Rock, and field director for Black Fork Strategies. He has been an organizer and electoral operative in Ohio for more than 15 years. His lived work includes founding grassroots organizations such as My Brother's Keeper, NEO, focusing on training and supporting formerly incarcerated men, serving as a pastor of a local church, and has held multiple organizing and campaign roles for the Ohio Organizing Collaborative and Stand Up for Ohio. In 2018, Ray led Black Fork's voter registration program that successfully registered over 140,000 voters, served as the deputy director for signature collection for Issue 1, which was qualified on the ballot and was an initiative in Ohio, and then also led the Get Out to Vote operation, which knocked on more than 350,000 doors. Ray holds an associate's degree in pastoral studies from Ohio Christian University and a bachelor's degree in substance abuse and mental health counseling. Lastly, I'd like to welcome and bring in Tyrell. Tyrell is a leader in his community, is actually an elected official, holds space in Spaces in Action in Washington, D.C. And I'm so excited because he's also a pastor. He's also been leading us through some wellness journeys, sharing not only his own journey and experience, but also what it means and looks like to invite others in. So Tyrell, I'm so excited to have you here today and joining us as well. So we'll go ahead and dive in. So for everyone here, we were marinating in this question. And if we can, take about 2 minutes each, popcorn it around. Whoever feels moved to speak first, go ahead and do so. But what are you currently thinking and feeling about the November 2020 election? And what has your strategy and your organization looked like since COVID? And don't jump in at once, okay? All right, here we go.
So how are we looking at this year's election? For me, for the Freedom Bloc, we are very, very, very excited. This election has shown us how much we need grassroots leadership and a long-term plan. And what we've done in October was develop a 10-year strategy to recruit, develop 100,000 leaders over the next 10 years. So with COVID happening, with the inception of even more racism, even more poverty in Black communities, this election becomes important for us because it gives us a place that allows us to change the narrative of voting for the lesser of two evils. It allows us to create a better plan that allows us to have control over politics instead of politics having control over us. So everything that's happening right now with COVID, with schools, with people not trusting elected officials, it has allowed us to create a foundation to change the way Black people are courted through the election and the way Black people look at politics, and help us understand that the policies that are enacted are ultimately policies to keep us down. And until we develop our own political analysis and our own political foundation and grounding, that we will continue to be in poverty and continue to be left out. So for the Freedom Bloc, we were able to create a platform to create our own, to develop our own candidates and create our own policies based on real life experiences of Black people that allows us to move towards a place of liberation and freedom, as opposed to depending on these systems that were ultimately not made for us.
Yeah, and Ray, I think you mentioned that one of your goals is to bring in and then train and engage 100,000 new leaders in your community.
Yes, over the next 10 years. Our communities is hurting from the lack of real Black authentic leadership. And oftentimes that we look at leadership, we look to our churches and we look to those people with college degrees and those people in city and state government jobs. When the bulk of our leadership is just untapped talent right inside of our community, right in the 10-block radius of our own houses, that because they don't have the credentials or don't dress the part, we don't recognize them as leaders. But they know more about what the community needs than the people we actually call Black leaders. So our goal is to find 100,000 Black people and extract their leadership out of them that allows them to build community Black power inside of our communities.
Yeah, thank you for that. What about everyone else? What are you currently thinking and feeling about the November 2020 election? What's coming up for you all?
Well, I can comment on, the moment in its entirety, seeing as it's hard to separate, what is, a result of, the tension around the election, the pandemic, uprisings, people taking action to protect their lives in any of those arenas. It's really allowed me the space to reflect on the fact that, you know, as much as things are wildly different, they're also exactly the same. And so there are some elements of this that are super unsurprising, unfortunately. The same dynamics of inequality that had left Black workers behind historically are also playing out, as we navigate all of these situations, particularly with COVID, the safer at home policy, or safer at home policies that we see in across the country. Those tend to protect wealthier workers who tend to be, white workers don't usually tend to be people of color, folks of privilege who have access to Zoom usually, and they put directly in harm's way Black workers, folks who, as we're saying are essential workers, but essentially, like I said, are put directly in harm's way. And so, like I said, those, dynamics of inequality continue to play out. And I lift that up just because, it is an example of a policy choice. And it is a legacy of policy choices that have led us to a moment that a culture that doesn't value Black people, Black work, and is, where a lot of our issues stem from. And seeing as it is a policy choice, it also means that we can make the choice to walk away from devaluing Black people and Black workers. And so I think that's collectively our work, is to make sure that we are ushering people into an era where we value Black folks. I think that more people publicly are having conversations about addressing anti-Blackness, and we're here to move folks towards maybe even being pro-Black, so I'm excited about, seeing what that could look like. I don't think that there's anything pro-Black about the election, but it is a harm reductionist step that we need to take, again, to protect our lives.
Yeah.
I'm really sitting with what you just said. That hit me a certain way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's real. That's so real. So right now with Black Roots Alliance, we're recognizing that a lot of people are feeling pressed on all sides. So we are taking a different approach to canvassing and really calling voters to just ask about what they think and what they feel, like how they're feeling in the pandemic, how they're feeling about voting in the election. Like, we're not, connected to any candidate, although we're talking about a specific ballot initiative in Illinois around the fair tax. But, our real goal is to find out, like, what people are really feeling. Like, it's, what do they think about the social issues of our time? What do they think about public policies? Like, what are the real sentiments around the government? And if it's working, if it's not working, how they think it can change, if they think it can change, and hearing just the disillusionment and the frustration, but also in a lot of instances, the hope. Like, folks really want to feel inspired and want to see themselves beyond this moment. And that's been really exciting, and also encouraging that, people are really activated and energized and want to be a part of the change in a way that I think is unique to this moment. And my hope is that it continues even beyond the election, because it's all bigger. It's bigger than any candidate. It's bigger than any one issue. Like, we really are in a collective moment of shaping our reality and shaping our future. And I think that that's really what people, I think, feel and recognize.
So what we're thinking in terms of, how this election is going to really shape the future of our country, the future of our states, our cities, at the local level, is thinking about how we get folks engaged in the process. I often think about how I have conversations with brothers in my community all the time, young brothers who aren't registered to vote. And the one thing I ask them is, like, hey, do you have a friend who's been arrested? Do you have a friend that's currently in jail? And most of them say yes. And I say, well, do you know who makes the determination as to how much time they should get in prison? And most of them don't know that. And then when I explain to them that they have the ability to have impact on who's making these decisions, what those decisions look like, understanding how as a people, how we got from where slavery was to where we are now with the mass incarceration, understanding all of those implications, and using that as one of the first mechanisms to get folks involved, and understanding that I think at one point we talked about, voting is a right. And while voting is a right, voting has now become a responsibility. We don't have the luxury to sit out elections anymore. We don't have the luxury to just, say a hope and a prayer and a wish and believe that it might happen the way we need it to happen for our community, or for the things that we need to see at the local level. So it's about getting folks involved, getting them to remain involved. So getting them involved, getting them engaged. And then after that, bringing a real sense of accountability to the folks that we put in office. I think that the one thing we have seen with the current occupant of the White House, 45, is that there's no real sense of checks and balances. And really understanding that there is a system of checks and balances. There is a way for you to hold elected leadership accountable. And so really getting folks to understand that your vote is your voice and it does count. And it counts outside of Election Day. I think that's ultra important as well.
Yeah, I think it really is. And I appreciate one thing that each of you have said in a different way around what does it actually look like right now, because there is no choice but to vote. Like, our vote is directly tied to whether or not we're breathing tomorrow. And we are actually actively losing lives every day. We're having a lot of our family and our friends shot and murdered by police. We're having people that look like us shot and murdered by police on an almost daily basis. And it's live and it's in our face. And one of the things that sits in my body often, there's this fear around, when am I going to get the call that it was somebody that I love or somebody that I know? And especially for our brothers who are in this movement, who are literally putting themselves in between people that they care about or have organized and police officers on the front line every day. For all of our brothers and sisters stepping into that space, and all of our siblings in that space, it really sits uncomfortably in my body. There's not a moment where I feel like I can breathe a clear breath without noticing that it's catching somewhere, just because of that concern and that fear and that love that exists. So I appreciate all of you for leaning into that, because I think we're in a time that is very different. We often say that every election is the one that really matters the most. Yeah. But I don't think I felt that in my body like I do for this one. So that's a big piece. And it actually leads us right into our next question. Our next question is, what does it mean to be Black in America? What are you learning and what are you needing?
Yeah, being Black in America has depression now by the ways white supremacy has through narratives about us and continue to kill us, and now we're called to tell our own stories and stand in more solidarity with our brothers and sisters across the country. Some of us need self-care, and recognizing just this is what America is.
So it looks like we're losing one of our guests for a minute, and I think it's frozen. Internet's doing some things. So why don't we have one of you, either Ray or Tyrell, go ahead and jump in until internet catches up.
For me, it means to be so feared and intimidated by that you have to continue to enact laws that keeps us from reaching our full potential. We are so feared from the power that we have, because our power does not lie in us. It lies in the communities that we build. that white ideology or white ignorance, some call white supremacy ideology, does not want us to understand how connected we are and how much power we have as a collective, because we've never operated out of individuality that this country, that this white supremacy narrative have preached. We have always worked out of communal power. That's the power that we have. That's the power that we have been taught. And we were enslaved and were taught through our enslavement, we were able to develop our own power, our own language, our own ways of being, our own ways of living. So through our own ingenuity, we have been able to build power. And I think right now, the country is not ready for us to enact and actualize that power because it allows us to build communities where everyone has equity, where everyone has agency. And that's a world that capitalism can't live in. And capitalism is ultimately the language of this country. And Black people, to their core values, don't really live out capitalistic principles. We believe in community. We believe in looking out for each other, caring for each other. So our power is feared because we have the ability to bring people together on the same page and create something for everybody. So for me, being Black just means like the world, the world is against us because the world can't control us.
Yeah, one of the things that you spoke to when we were all talking beforehand about this question that I really want you to share a little bit now around is the difference between dominance and dominion.
Yeah.
I felt like you were preaching to me earlier, and I just want to bring that back in because I was like, "Oh, that's a good point." You need to share that.
We have been, our roots for African men, for Black men, is to lead our families in a way that develops leadership in our household. And being enslaved and shipped over here in boats and enslaved and being taught white ideology, Black men ultimately have grown to learn dominance over the household and dominance over the family, which is a white construct as opposed to dominion. And our roots allows us to have dominion over the household where we understand everything that's going on in the household without necessarily having control of everything in the households. We're able to take care of our family, we're able to take care of our daughters and our sons, and our wives and our household in a way that allows everybody's leadership to rise without us feeling threatened. And this Western civilization has ultimately implanted in us dominance, where we see a high level of individuality in men, a high level of domestic violence and violence in men, because we have been uprooted from our roots of having dominion and building community to this white construct, this individuality construct that has inbred low self-esteem in us to make us think that we need dominance as opposed to dominion. But that's part of our power. And when we get back to that power of having dominion and raising leaders inside of our household that go out and create community and recreate community and build up the community as opposed to tearing down the community, that's what ultimately scares white people, because we're able to build up a construct, we're able to build up a foundation that allows us to ultimately take care of our families without the spotlight being on us.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that framing because I think a lot of us are in this experience where Black men are being taken out of homes. They've been taken out of homes since we were brought over on ships, right? Families have been separated since that moment, even before then. And I was just saying in the background, we have some background going on, that what Katelyn was about to share with us must have been fire, because the internet was like, nope, you can't have it right now. You can't have it. And I was like, okay, she must have been throwing out some truth to power, because the internet always seems to drop when people start talking fire. Ray, it started getting choppy on you too. I was like, hold on now, StreamYard. So, all right, Katelyn, we're going to go ahead and pass it back to you.
I don't know where but I really just would want to echo everything that I just heard. Like there's a certain energy of us coming into a greater expression of power, and a greater expression of our wholeness, and a greater expression of our divinity. And I think that when something new emerges, all the things that it pushes against react, and that we're in this very, intense moment of reaction. But I also, I guess, recognize the levels of exhaustion for folks who have been, fighting and just pushing for so long. There's a deep need for healing. There's a deep need for self-care. There's a deep need for resilience in a new way. And I think we're being challenged to have new thoughts about how we show up for the work, and have new ideas and perspectives about how we are there for one another. And being Black in America is having to recognize and wrestle with all of these things, and still live your life, and still find a way to be a part of the liberation that you're fighting for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly would echo what has been said. I think one of the things that I would say, if there's a word I could use to describe what it means to be Black in America right now, I would use the word endangered. Mm-hmm. And I use that word in the sense or the context of we have to deal with the reality of challenges as it relates to the communities we live in, where we work, where we may worship, where we may shop, where we may try to have entertainment. And it almost feels as if at every turn that there's a system that is out to oppress us, to ensure that we can never get above a certain point. And I think that the constructs of many of the institutions that are built in this country now have been intentionally placed to ensure that the Black man, the Black woman, the Black family can't get beyond a certain point. And so when I think about what it means to be Black in America at this time, I think of that word endangered. Because look at it, many of our families have become endangered with the absence of fathers and mothers. Many of our communities have become dangerous to live in because of the influx and infusion of certain aspects that throw off the kilter of the dynamic that should be present in a community. So when you look at the challenges that we've always had to experience and deal with as a people, when I see what we still have to face now, I see endangerment. I see, I think about that motto of pull yourself up by the bootstraps. We've never asked for a handout. We don't need handouts. Handouts keep you at that same level. It's where the ideology of poverty pimping comes from. It's where the ideology of keeping people where they are just so that they can never break after a certain point. Fleas, when they're born, they have the capacity to jump up to 18 feet. But if you put a flea in a jar, that flea will be conditioned to only go as high as that jar is concealed for them to go. And many of us as a people have been put in this position where we don't know the ability we have in us to go further beyond the construct of where we've been confined in.
That is such a huge question. What does it mean to be Black in America right now? I thought of a lot of the things that y'all brought up. Overwhelmingly, my ideas were around collective grief and collective love. I think those are some of the huge things that we share as Black folks. Collective grief, by that I mean with people you don't know personally, you've never seen before, who, at one point in time, we were just rolling up, like, like everybody remember what they was doing Friday night, or, whenever it was when you found out that the Black Panther died, that meant something. Everybody remembers, like, what was you doing when Prince died, Michael Jackson? There, I was confiding in a friend, letting them know that there's not a time that I don't see an animal outside, like, on the street, that I don't think of Mike Brown, that I don't think of times that they left real people, humans, out in the street. And I know everybody doesn't think that, but that is a collective, like, grief and trauma that we carry. I know the city is coming to pick up that animal. I can't believe they left that person there. And that's something that we all know and felt together, and something I feel like that we went through not even knowing each other. The flip side of that, I think, is a collective love that we experience that is, unfortunately, a love that's born of oppression, but nonetheless is a beautiful thing. That when Black folks love each other, when we say to each other, like, I got you, that means something totally different than when it comes from other folks. And it's a level that, if somebody hasn't been through the things that you've been through, they might not understand what that means. And, what I'm needing, through all of that, when I see so much love coming, from Black folks and between Black folks, I think one of the things that we really need is to be able to acknowledge the diversity of Black folks. There's so many different kind of Black folks. We from the States, we from the island, we from the motherland, we're from all over the place. We really truly are everywhere. We speak all different languages. A lot of us are gender non-conforming. We're not all men or women. And we belong to a lot of families that are not nuclear families. And we share a lot of love in a really beautiful way that needs to be uplifted and never left behind. And so I think that's something that if we're serious about building Black unity and moving forward as Black people, we need to move forward with all Black people, not just some of us.
Mm-hmm. JB, you're hitting my heart, because there have been so many conversations around who is your family that you were birthed into and who is the family that you chose because they helped birth you. And those are two very different things. There's a deep love that I have for all of my family, and there are other places that I can go that welcome me with arms wide open, that don't expect me to show up a certain way, but they will hold me accountable if I'm not in alignment with myself. Right. And so I'm 100% with you. Like, I'm sitting here and really marinating in everything that you're all sharing, because I'm not gonna lie, I had a moment where my body was reacting to, like, us being referenced as animals, right? And there's a very truth in the reality that I know so many people that will kill somebody over a dog, but won't stand in front of a Black man or woman or person who is really about to lose their lives. And so that, for me, that hits in a certain way, right? It hits in a way where just honoring what it means to be sacred and to be divine looks like living a Black life to me. That's what it actually means to be Black in America, because there are so many opportunities for our next breath to not be present. And it's not just where I believe everything's in divine alignment, and there are moments where things just hit me a certain way. I do want to call in, there's a commenter, Miles J, commented that we need resources and networks and need trauma training and policy training. And one of the things that I was sitting in as I read that comment was how very real that is, and how a lot of us already have the things we need. And to all of your points, we maybe don't even know what's in us, because we have been conditioned to function through survival and to function through deficit, and not really look at abundance and joy as a way of being and living. So I'm honoring everything that you all are saying, and y'all have me sitting in some wrestling. Like, my chest area is like doing this stuff, and my belly's churning, and my heart is beating faster. And then I'm remembering to kind of lean back and to take breaths, because all of those things, I mean, each of you were saying things that were hitting me different, because being Black in America is so much, it's so many things. And it's also brilliant. Our survival is brilliant. And the last question, just for all of us to step into, and I think this one is necessary, because often we keep hearing this word around self-care, but we don't actually know what it means or know what it means to actually embody it. And so JB, I'm actually going to toss this to you first, but what are you practicing for self-care? What does that look like for you?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm definitely still learning. I think for the rest of my life, I will continue learning about self-care. One of the best things that I have learned to do is to say no. I learned that no is a complete sentence. It stands alone quite well. People who sometimes are asking for my time with good reason. Unfortunately, I can't always say yes to them. I always want to say yes. I want to please folks and would love to be with them, but sometimes I just need to be with myself. Sometimes I just need to rest and do nothing. And so that's been a valuable lesson that I'm learning. I've never been an executive director before. This is my first time stepping into this kind of role. And I'm learning that there are a lot of demands. There's a lot to be done. And even with, I'm one of two co-executive directors, there's still plenty of work. So that has been a strong lesson for me. But in addition to that, it has a lot to do with unplugging. I don't watch the news on a cycle. I don't get all the up to the minute updates. The news it's a rerun. We know what happened, more or less. So I don't need to keep watching that same episode. And spending more time away from social media. Sometimes I like to go on Instagram and just look at the memes, the goofy stuff. But, I roll with a lot of people who also post real stuff. And sometimes that's kind of heavy for me. And so just taking a step back from social media sometimes.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I kind of envision the future has a lot of co-directors, co-executive directors, especially because too often, we were talking about this in another episode around internal power versus external power and how external power is the title. And titles often get snatched, right? They get snatched or people realize this title comes with a bunch of stuff that I don't need to be doing and I don't want to do. And so even figuring out what it means to balance not only internally but externally that power to bring other people in, because there is definitely more than enough space, So thank you for that. That being a new executive director, whether you are by yourself or co-executive directoring, if I can make up some terminology, that's hard. So so I'm giving each of you love because I know each of you are holding a space like that. So thank you. But yeah. What about everybody else? What are you all practicing? Ooh, I think you're muted.
Yep, I found it. My self-care practice is really around doing whatever I want to do if the world wasn't on fire, just being able to be myself. I love to play video games. I'm gonna take a nap, spend time with family. I found that my self-care is also a rigorous attention to my thought patterns and being sure that my thoughts stay positive and stay focused on the best possible experiences, and journaling and interrupting those negative thought patterns, so that because it helps me be more equipped to take better care of myself. And our organization actually has wellness practice. We have Wellness Wednesdays where we take a break from our work to just check in with everyone's mental health, check in with personal goals, and kind of remind everyone to pause and reflect on the good in their lives. We'll share a rose, which is something positive, a stem, which is a person who has supported you, or a thorn that it's something that's challenging. And we just want to hold space for each other while we celebrate, while we mourn, while we do the work that's necessary to live our best lives. And so I think all of that really contributes to having a culture of self-care. So it's not just me always taking care of myself, but really being invested in other people taking care of themselves too.
Yes. Yeah, I see JB and JB, everybody shaking their head. I think one of the things that I love that I'm hearing about this Wellness Wednesdays piece. But also the fact that you actually recognize that healing is a culture. That is a cultural piece that you step into, and it's a choice. And the fact that you actually incorporate that into not only your individual practice, but that of the collective is beautiful to me. I'm having all types of feels. Yeah.
For me, it's grounded and rooted in self-love. I believe self-love is the foundation of self-care. It's a revolutionary act in this time. And that allows me to give myself grace and have mercy on myself in regards to the white supremacist ideology of 40-hour week, the standard of survival of the fittest and work yourself in the ground. So in order for me to preserve myself and be an example of revolutionary love and leadership, I ensure that I take naps every day. In taking naps, I lead my organization in that. So we have a nap challenge, a time for people to put the work down, go take a nap, refresh your body, refresh your brain, that allows you to be your full self. My staff works a 32 to 35-hour week as opposed to a 40-hour week. I'm normally home by 6:30, 7 o'clock every day. And if I answer my phone, it's because there's an emergency on the other end. My phone is programmed to give a certain ring for emergencies and a certain ring for BS. People don't believe me when I say that, but so I'm able to control what I bring into my circle. And then as I control what I bring into my circle, I'm able to control what my circle allows in, through ensuring grace and mercy that I don't have to keep up with the Joneses, that the most important thing in this world is me. And everything grows from me. And in order for me to grow, I need proper rest. In order for me to grow, I need proper nourishments in my body. So I'm on 34 days right now of not eating meat. And I'm a self-proclaimed glorifier of being a carnivore, which is, I don't know if it's a word, but I am a meat eater. I have quit doing that for 34 days now. And just, really taking care of my temple and really taking care of my body, but doing it in a way that inspires and leads people to understand that they are control of their world. And if we can take control of our world, we can deconstruct the things that we've been taught that I believe is wrong. I believe we should have more time for ourselves and less time to build other people's dreams. So that's the way I work my organization. And I believe this world is full of users. I believe we use people. And I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think where that becomes a problem is we allow organizations to use us without using them. So my interviews start out with, what would you like to accomplish if you got hired with my organization, personally? And then from those personal goals, we develop a plan that allows for my organization to reach the goals that we need to reach. That as long as you're reaching your goals, then we will reach our goals. And then when it's time for the paid relationship to end, you have accomplished so much on your end that what you accomplished for the organization, you don't feel guilty for moving on, like you left everything at the organization. So for me, self-care is just a revolutionary act, that we have to be the center of our world and take care of our world in order for us to move and matriculate in this world as we see it today.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way. And, JB just shared what a great way to folks' growth. Like that says it all. Ray, I'm kind of sitting in this like 33 days of no meat thing that you just shared, because I mean, Ray and I know each other from previous work. And if you know Ray, one of the things that he said when we were touching base was, you know, normally I have a slab of ribs with a side of chicken, and then what else? And some pulled pork. Like that's how he rolls. So 33 days of no meat is real interesting, especially because if you know Ray, that's like, I'm wondering, like, are you still okay? Where are you at? You still? I can see you.
Am well. I am so well. It's amazing to me, honestly, you know, because I love meat. Like I love meat. Like my grandmother owned the grocery store. My uncle owned his own barbecue spot. My auntie owned her own bar. I love meat. Like I eat meat. But 34 days in, and I feel great. I feel clear. But more importantly, you know, it was for my body, but more importantly, for my community. And I can't be out preaching the gospel. I can't be out helping my community love themselves and putting all this junk into my body that weighs me down and bogs me down and causes me to have 180 over 120 blood pressure, to have a stroke in 2006, a heart attack in 2007, and still not make any changes because I'm undefensible. And at some point in time, you just grow up and realize, like, that's not indefensible. That's just stupid. So I'm happy where I'm at right now. Labor Day is Monday, so we don't see
how you hold out. Will you make it to day 37 or whatever that is?
We gonna see what happens. But I'm
Ray, just make sure they put some salmon on the grill. You'll be all right.
There you go, Tyrell. Just you need a separate grill.
Yeah.
Don't even smell it. Don't
even smell it. Right. So yeah, that's, I believe in, I believe self-care is a revolutionary act of love. And right now we need revolutionary acts of love inside of ourselves and inside of our community. And a lot of that stems from, getting rid of high fructose corn syrup and processed meats and sterilized meats and all that. So, and I'm clearer and I'm able to see. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And Tyrell, I'm really looking forward to everything you're about to bring to us too. So for you, how do you practice self-care? What does that look like?
So for me, self-care, when I think about it, self-care has a different meaning, I feel like, depending on my mood. There are days where, I want to play video games. There are days where I want to do nothing. There are days where I just want to sleep. There are days where I want to do a combination of the things. The one thing that COVID has brought me is a renewed sense of my own health. In your 20s, you feel invincible. You can eat what you want, go where you want, do it how you want to do it. And then you cross into 30 and out of nowhere, you get this weight on you and you just like, what is this? And so as a former athlete, it was a tad hard to hear my nieces and my nephews and my godchildren calling me a big bear. But I lost 30 pounds from the start of COVID, been on the front lines of protesting as well. I think really kind of pushed me to keep going with it. And just really thinking about what that means, what long-term health means for me, where I want to be, and knowing that, I can't run this 50, 60-hour work week every week, going out of my 30s into my 40s and my 50s and expect to be where I need to be health-wise. And so, exercise is important. The way you eat is important. It's not what goes in you that defiles you, it's what comes out, but you get what you put in. You get out what you put in. And so just really being mindful of that. So for me, self-care is about just what it is that in that moment is going to help you to feel like you can unplug, you can get away from things for a while. I am an avid, gamer when it comes to 2K and Madden. I buy the latest edition of the game every year. I just got my Madden last week. And so I have my moments where I'm just like, I want to kind of be free from the duties and responsibilities that I have to think about every day. And so for me, self-care is thinking about what it is that you care about, and how that helps you on that day-to-day basis. And so my office, we also have a monthly day in the month where we can be off when we're off work, and it's a self-care day. So these things just really kind of helping as it relates to being able to recharge, refocus, and recenter yourself. I think it's ultra important. And so I think in bad, you can sometimes find good. And, you know, while COVID has brought some bad, a lot of bad, let me not say some, a lot of bad, there have been some bright spots. And so I think that sometimes you got to find those bright spots. And I'm fortunate. I live in Washington, D.C. I get to go running downtown and see the monuments and things of that sort while I'm running. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But just really thinking about what taking care of you means and looks like. And for everybody is different. And so, you know, everybody doesn't have that Ray-like ability to not eat meat for 30 days at a time. But they may be able to incorporate smoothies or vegetables or cutting out other items out of their diet. And so what that really looks like. So I'm very big on health. My family has a history of diabetes. So I'm very conscious of it. I drink more water than I do anything now. And so just really taking that into consideration. And I think when you think about self-care, it's not just about the things that will bring you satisfaction. It's also thinking about the things that will keep you in that position to be able to have those opportunities to do those things to bring you satisfaction. What good is it to have that ability and you're sick? What good is it to have the opportunity to go and travel and you can't go? So it's important to really be thinking about those health implications as well when you think about that self-care.
Yeah, and can you share, because I don't want to mess it up how you said it. You shared something yesterday when we were talking that about kids and sugar. Like, and I can't remember, but
Yeah.
Everybody needs to hear this. And I was my daughter went to pick up a juice and I was like, give me that juice, get some water.
So we have been doing a push, an advocacy push here, similar to some other cities, to tax sugary beverages. Our community is saturated with ads on television, just about twice as much as those in white communities. So about 17.9 ads a day, opposed to about 8.1 a day in white communities. And so on an annual basis, many of our children are drinking sugary beverages, and it amounts to a bathtub full of sugar. That's the amount of sugar they're consuming on an every year basis, enough to fill up a bathtub with sugar. And so thinking about that and the implications that it has on our communities, I'll never forget being at a rec center here in Southeast Washington, D.C. And one of the staffers said, oh, they just need some candy. That's what's wrong with them. And so many of our young people have been wired up on sugar for such a long time, and we don't understand the implications. We don't understand the anger and the rage and the sensitivity that comes with many of our young people. And a lot of it stems from what they're eating and what they're drinking, and specifically related to the sugary beverages. It's really absurd to think that our kids are drinking a bathtub full of sugar on an annual basis.
Yeah. I was watching everybody's faces as you shared that, and it was the same as my reaction, and it hit me again when you said it, but it was like a whole, to conceptualize that, a bathtub full of sugar. Like if I walked in somebody's house and they had a bathtub full of sugar and was like, yeah, we eat a spoonful of that every day, I would be like, we need to reevaluate everything in your life right now. Like we need to scoop the sugar out. We need to get. And so that visual just put me in a certain place, because I think it's so easy, like, and I'm trying to verbalize this. I think it's so easy to sink into places and moments of time where we're depressed. And when I think about it, how often that correlates to like If you're depressed, just give it sugar. You'll be fine. If you're tired, just give yourself some sugar. You'll be fine. And sugar comes in a whole bunch of different ways. Like it's in bread. And I don't know too many Black people that don't eat bread in some way, shape, or form. It comes in barbecue sauce. It comes in juice. It comes in, like, it's in all of these things that we consume that are actually integral to our culture. So I'm not saying we get rid of them in whole, right? But how do we actually moderate what we put in our bodies to actually nourish ourselves? Because nourishment looks very different than just eating, right?
Yeah. And Ray, I actually have you beat. I haven't eaten anything that's a sweet cookie, cupcake, brownies, nothing in a little over 2 months now. And it's amazing for me because I have some family from Farmville, Virginia, and one of the ladies at the church will every now and again send me a pound cake, and she hasn't done that in probably about a year or so. So I'm grateful. But if she sends it to me, I'm gonna mail it to Ray because I can't eat it.
Yeah, man, I can't give up meat and pound cake, bro. We are preachers, bro. We are preachers now.
So, you know.
You gotta look out for Ray's health.
We all preachers. We all preachers. We can't give up the bird and the pound cake now. Sweet potato pies. Ain't nothing like a sweet potato pie from an elder.
Well, you know, technically a sweet potato is a vegetable. So
right.
You ain't gotta give up the sweet potato pie, you know. So
See,
that'll be my Thanksgiving dessert. There you go.
JB will take the pound cakes. Just send them to JB. I'll take any sweet potato pies because I need more vegetables. So you can send those to me. Man, you just hit something with sweet potato pie. My grandma used to make these sweet potato pies, and they were the thinnest pies. Like they were maybe this thin. And nobody in my family makes them exactly the same. Like I have some aunties or cousins that get close, but it's not the same. So, and my dad's always like, "Why are your pies so thick?" Look, sir. Okay, I add more vegetables, and I always what they don't know, and I probably shouldn't share this lab, but I be adding in zucchini. I slide in some zucchini because it takes up the flavor of everything else. But it's like it just doesn't. It's not the same. I'm like I know because I'm adding veggies to your life because you're gonna eat this whole pie as soon as it gets in your car. So, so yes, man, and I do wanna. I just want to take a second and just say thank you to each of you for sharing all of your self-care because we need, I think as a community, we need to not only share it with each other, but also get very clear around what it looks like when we're living it. You know, self-care is just not a good sounding word that we throw out. It's actually a lived practice. And so I'm just really grateful to each of you for sharing your stories. There's a link up right now. We would love to hear some of the stories from all of you out there who are listening, who have joined us. It's Black at the Polls. So share what it means to be a voter and to be Black in America right now. We would also love to hear from you if you have some ideas or topics for the next show or even some of the future shows. We would love to get those in as well. This conversation is part of a series. And so I want to just take a moment and honor each of you and say thank you so much for showing up in this space, for bringing all of you in. You know, you all have given me a little bit something to marinate on. And so I'm just so grateful to have you joining us and have you here. And I can't say that enough. I'm probably gonna say it like 5 more times before we end, just because you guys gave me so much life today. And then also sending out a very warm thank you and appreciation for all of our guests out there watching, for all of your questions and your comments, and just for being present with us. And so if you're feeling energized to join us in the movement for Black Power, there are a couple different ways that you can join us. Again, that power story, if you want to share your story with us, please do so. And we also have volunteers. We would love to welcome you as a volunteer to do some of the work as well. So we want to also hear why organizing is important to you, because it is important to all of us. It really helps change our communities and shift what power looks like. So today's conversation will be immediately available on the Community Change Action social media site. There's a YouTube and a Facebook. So all of our friends that aren't able to join us live, you can still get caught up later. And we invite you to like, subscribe, and share those links with your network. So we have another session coming up. Again, this is part of a series, so please join us. The next one is August 19th, or September. I'm sorry, that was wrong. August 19th, September 19th, from 1 to 2 p.m. And we have a lot of things that are going to be happening in the show. And we're just really excited to have, more in these series. So thank you again to everyone who's joined us. Thank you for those that are on YouTube and on Facebook. We are just sending you a warm welcome and a warm thank you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end our show. Again, thank you, panelists. I've really appreciated each of you.